August 16th, 2022 Board of County Commissioners meeting to order. Beth, will you take roll call, please?
Barry?
Here.
Steve is absent today. Bo?
Here.
David?
Here.
We have a quorum. We'll proceed. Everybody please rise for the pledge. Okay, consent agenda. What are the wishes, gentlemen?
Motion to approve is presented.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Barry?
Yes.
Corey?
Yes.
Bo?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Motion carried. Item D is the UMDHU 2023 annual budget hearing. This is where we'll open it to a public hearing. So at this point, we'll open the public hearing for the 2023 budget. Is there anybody here that has comments on the budget? For a second time, any comments on the UMDHU 2023 annual budget? And for a final time, any comments on the 2023 annual budget for UMDHU? Public hearing is closed. Do we need to approve that then, or is it just the public hearing? I'm asking you, Karen.
I believe that you guys will be approving it when you meet with the joint
That's what
board,
I thought.
yeah, so-
It was just
yeah.
the public hearing. Perfect. Thank you. New business, the JPA Judson Township Zoning Authority. Is there someone here from Judson Township? If you're, could you come to the mic, introduce yourself and, morning. You don't have to push the button on that one. No, that one's automatic.
My name's Chad Bosty. I'm on Judson Township, and with the JPA, we're looking forward to working with the county, with the township having final say on any zone changing, because relatively, we live next to our neighbors. The county commissioners don't live next to my neighbors, which there's stuff being built in the backyard and so on. So if we could work with the town or the county, and then we could move forward, and with the township having final say, it's kind of where we're leading to. And did you guys ever get what was drawn up yet?
Yes, we do. We do have it here.
So you know what it's all about then. But that's where we're kind of leaning towards that way. See what you guys think about it.
Okay. Cameron, do we have anything from Planning and Zoning Department?
Good morning, Commissioners. Cameron Heimer, Development Services Director. I did have a chance to review this last week. I have some concerns that I would like to address to the board. Some of the wording of this kind of stood out to us. I also should add that I did consult with staff and with Karen too as we went over this. My concern is that entering into a JPA with a township would create a burden for my staff. One, possibly having 50-plus townships in the county. If each township were to have us adopt a JPA with custom conditions or custom items on it, it would be extremely difficult for myself and staff to recall and to follow every JPA. Another concern with that is, as you know, the zoning ordinances are fluid. They change and they adapt as the county grows and as we learn. Anytime we would amend or update our zoning ordinance, it could put us in direct conflict with the JPA, with the townships. Part of number 5, it states that further, the county acknowledges that land within the township has historically been used for agricultural purposes, and the township desires the land to be primarily used for agricultural purposes in the future. When considering any proposed use and/or planning and zoning related applications, including but not limited to conditional use permits, temporary use permits, variances, and zone changes within the township, the county shall earnestly take into account such historical uses and future desired uses, provide notice to the township of the proposed use and/or application as detailed in section 6 below, and shall comply with and carry out the township's determination as to the suitability of the proposed use and/or application within the township. I have a concern there why we certainly appreciate township comments, and we take those into account, and I believe both boards do a great job at that as well. By complying with that, it almost ties the board's hand in decisions as far as zoning decisions within the county. In addition to that, it does say when considering any proposed use. So that's a little vague. My concern is, does that mean every building permit would have to go through a 30-day period to get feedback from the township before my office could release a building permit? As you know, due to our short building season, those are already kind of something that we try to move along quickly as fast as we can, and that would certainly hold that up and be detrimental to citizens of Williams County. In addition, we already, for number 6, it says the county shall provide the township, through the township chairman or clerk, at least 30 days written notice of any public hearing related to any type of proposed use and any planning and zoning applications occurring within the boundaries of the township. Per our ordinance, we actually already do send out 30 days notice for anything that requires a public comment, in addition to administrative variance renewals, as well as minor subdivisions. So I feel like we have already been covering that. The last item, number 7, says the county planning and zoning office shall provide timely responses to inquiries from township officers and owners of the land within the township. Failure to provide such responses within 2 weeks of the inquiry entitles the inquiring party to have the inquiry placed on the agenda of the next regularly scheduled Planning and Zoning Commission. 2 comments I would have to that is I already, my staff, myself and my staff, we already do a pretty good job of replying in a timely manner. One example is Judson Township had asked for quite a lengthy records request on February 25th, 2002. We had it fully fulfilled within 3 working days on March 1st, 2002. As far as having the right to be placed on the agenda of the next regularly scheduled Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, any citizen of the county has that right already. They don't have to have it within a JPA to get on the agenda of not only the Planning and Zoning Commission, but the Board of County Commissioners. And so in further consultation with Karen, it was already determined that there is an AG opinion that says that a county is the default zoning if a township does not administer it. So it'd be in my opinion that we don't enter into a custom JPA with any townships for zoning in the county. It should either be the township completely does their own zoning or the county handles their zoning. But a hybrid between the two would just create burden and confusion for not only staff, but the public. If you have any further questions, I'll entertain those. Thank you.
Has anybody got any questions for Cameron before he sits down? Not yet. Stay close. How about questions for the Judson Township?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Cameron or Karen. Currently, if a township wants to have the county do their planning and zoning, we pretty much have a standard agreement already in place, right?
So it's, from speaking with Karen, we don't need necessarily a standard opinion. The Attorney General's opinion says that we are automatically the default zoning authority if the township does not administer themselves.
No, but I guess, let me rephrase that, Cameron. If a township that right now does not have the county doing their planning and zoning, and they want to turn it over to the county, do we have any type of an agreement now that they sign, we sign, that says we're going to do their planning and zoning?
I'm not sure of all the steps that the township would have to follow legally to relinquish their zoning to the county, but one that would happen, whatever steps they would need to follow by state law, the county would automatically, without having to sign anything, be the ones to administer that zoning.
So when Sauk Valley pulled out of county planning and zoning and took it over themselves, I mean, is that basically all they did is just go, well, we want to handle it from now on, or is there, what do you got to do to step away from county planning?
So there are quite a few steps that they would have to follow as a township, including, Karen may have the specifics, but I believe they need their own planning and zoning board. They would need, obviously, staff for the zoning itself, and I'm not sure of all the other steps. I will say Sauk Valley, it probably, in my opinion, would be debatable if they followed those steps, but that's a township that we've rarely seen any zoning requests in, so it hasn't become an issue quite yet.
Well, certainly, I mean, they're, McGregor obviously isn't quite as busy of an area as west of Williston, so I was just curious about that.
Yeah, I guess in answer to David's question, no, we don't have any written agreements with any townships to do their zoning. However, prior state law basically said that that a township was allowed to pass some sort of a resolution transferring their zoning authority over to the county. However, at that time, there was really no way for the township to reacquire it. So what the state legislature did is they repealed that statute and moved that over to the chapter dealing with joint powers agreements. And so now, if a township wants to have a joint powers agreement with the county, and the county agrees to one, they can enter a joint powers agreement to do the zoning, and then also make a way within that agreement to take it back. However, like Cameron mentioned, I mean, there's AG opinion out that says that without an agreement with the township, and unless and until a township does their own zoning comprehensive plan, a planning and zoning commission, and zoning regulations, the county's zoning regulations apply.
So if they wanted to, they could step away from county planning and zoning, and could they not just duplicate what the county has right now for ordinances and all of that?
Sure, they could duplicate our zoning ordinances, but they would still have to draft a comprehensive plan and appoint a planning and zoning commission. They couldn't just decide to, enforce the county's regulations without going through those other two steps.
Right, I mean, obviously, they'll have to have a board.
Yeah.
And as far as the comprehensive plan, could they not just adopt the counties also then?
Yes, they could do that.
So Cameron, in this case, in this scenario, any township, if it was approved, any township would request then that the county would do pretty much all of the work, and then goes to the planning and zoning commission, comes to the county commission, but then the township would have the final decision. Is that what I'm understanding here?
I would agree that, it would turn it into kind of a hybrid thing where some of the initial decision-making or the wishes of that township would need to be followed per this JPA. So when it goes to the Planning and Zoning Commission, Board of County Commissioners, you would be bound by this JP on what they would prefer for the zoning within that township. And I would just like to add, we do cherish our relationships with the townships. We certainly want to work with them. We do consider that a positive thing, and we take their comments into account as we move forward. And like I said, I know both boards certainly do a great job of that as well. So this isn't, I don't want to say that the township by any means is the bad guy. We really want to work with them and make sure that their townships are zoned and administered correctly.
Well, I wasn't certainly speaking of this particular township. I mean, I was talking as a whole. I mean, but I agree with you. We certainly want a great relationship as we can with our townships, but.
Yeah, and to add to that, that was part of my concern, is that every township could possibly have a JPA with certain conditions that they feel is best appropriate for their township, and that would be very difficult for myself and staff to try to administer zoning in townships that would have different conditions. So instead of having our zoning ordinance, we would almost have added conditions for unique areas of the county, and that would be very difficult to follow.
So, just so I have it straight in my head, you mean your recommendation would be to either they do their own, or it stays as is? They would have to have their own planning and zoning board, not a JPA. It would be more of you have your own planning and zoning, and the township deals with it. Am I off, or is that?
No, I wouldn't say you're off. Yeah, it should either be one or the other, nothing with a mixture in between. It's either the county administers the zoning or the township does. And again, we're more than happy to continue to administer that, but through this JPA that would really confuse things.
Any other questions or comments, guys?
I guess my question would probably be for the township. In section 5, I mean, it talks about, and I can appreciate that the township has historically been used for ag purposes, and the township desires the land be primarily used for ag purposes. Have you guys surveyed all the landowners in your township? I mean, some of those obviously are not ag producers, to see what their opinion was on that.
Yes, please come up.
Whoever would like to.
Then you get, then since it's new, you want to introduce yourself. Obviously, I know who you are, but for the record.
My name is Penny Soyseth, and I am a resident and the Judson Township Clerk. Still, right now, the majority of the property in Judson's Township is still agricultural purposes. And I know that there's a significant area that is industrial, so that brings in a lot of revenue, but the majority of the land is still agriculture. This actually came to our attention during the annual meeting, where the people from the township actually came in and they made motions. And really it came about because of the cryptocurrency and some of the things that happened along the lines with that. But so we started looking into some different things in reference to the open records request. We did get that. There's a few discrepancies that we did find in some of the meeting minutes, but here nor there. This is basically a result of that. Our goal, really, we believe that if we can do the JPA, it will keep things more consistent in the county instead of less consistent, because if you have each township that is doing their own planning and zoning, it's going to be different everywhere, where at least if there's a JPA, that there's consistency across the township or across the county, following the same plan, comprehensive use plan. So we'd still be following all of that, where if we were to do our own, we would be making our own stuff. This is not unique. McKenzie County has some, and I know that they're fairly new to planning and zoning, but McKenzie County has some townships that are completely doing their own planning and zoning, as well as some that have JPAs along with that, and some townships that are doing basically what's happening in Williams County, where the county is taking over all of that. So this really did come from the people, and so we are acting as a board to go with their wishes.
The only reason I bring that up, so to me, it seems like it might be infringement on private property rights. I mean, if I own land in Judson Township and I want to choose to do something with my agricultural land that's not agricultural purpose, I mean, to me, this says that the township is against that.
So right now, I could throw it back at you, and right now I could say that that's currently what the conditional or the comprehensive use plan is, because I'm outside of that area, and if I wanted to do my property as commercial or industrial, I don't fit within that, so you should tell me no. So, I mean, I could say the same thing. We would still have the same conditional use plan, or not conditional, I'm sorry. We would still have the same comprehensive use plan, so there would still be that to go by. However, just like right now, the decisions would be made at the lowest level of the closest to where the people are actually at, so.
Penny, how many members are in Judson Township? 3?
On the board?
Yeah.
There's 3 supervisors, a clerk, and a treasurer.
How many, let me rephrase that, how many voting members that make decisions?
There is 3, however, at our annual meeting, there was, how many people were there? 20, 25, something like that?
But when it comes to this JPA and decisions, I guess in the planning and zoning, you would have 3 members that would make that decision, correct?
There would be a planning and zoning board that would have to be put together. It wouldn't necessarily have to be
You would have your own planning and zoning board
that
on top of ours?
if we were to do our own planning and zoning,
No, if this JPA was approved.
If this JPA was approved, we wouldn't have to have a planning and zoning.
I understand that. That's my question, is that when the decision comes back to the township, as what you're saying, you guys want to do the final decision, correct?
Yes,
Okay, that decision is made by 3 board members, correct?
yes.
Okay.
However, with that being said, there would also, just like for you guys, there's recommendations from planning and zoning, there'd be recommendations from the county commission, and the people that are wanting to do anything, or the people that live there, they would also have their recommendations coming in. Just like what's happening now. Chad? Chad is actually a supervisor. I'm the clerk.
It goes back to the 3 voting members on the board. It's gonna be the neighbors to the people that are gonna be looking for the zone change. So you necessarily don't drive down the same road that my neighbor does where it's being built at. So I do. Most of the roads in our township, we're down. We meet our neighbors and the rest of the constituents in our township. And if they have concerns, they're more than welcome to come to the township meetings and voice it with their neighbors too, you know what I mean? Instead of coming here and you guys, well, there's 3 people that got to make it this morning or something, you know what I mean? Not everybody got to come at 8 o'clock in the morning. Most people go to work at 8 in the morning. So not everybody that has concerns can come to these meetings. It opens it up to another possible meeting that they can attend.
So then why don't you guys just do your own planning and zoning?
Well, we'd like to work with the county, because you guys already got all the same stuff that we would have to get. You get what I'm saying? So when it comes down to making the final decision, it's gonna be, the neighbors are gonna be there, and I gotta see them on a regular basis.
Just a question, if I may, and it's not anything against you guys or anybody else, but in my experiences on this board, I've seen situations in the past where the township board members, maybe 2 out of the 3 are family members, okay? And the other one isn't. And a situation arises where maybe those 2 members of that family don't get along with somebody that wants to make a zone change, so they vote it down. I've seen that happen here. I guess that's my concern as far as fair representation for everybody involved. And I'm not saying you're perfect or not perfect and we're perfect. I'm just saying that's a situation in my years of experience on this board that I've seen has happened. And it gets to be, what do you want to call it, the Hatfield and McCoy situation? So I'm just...
And I agree. I mean, I think, the more local, the better. But, I mean, we're not that far removed from Judson Township. I mean, and everybody is more than welcome to come to the planning and zoning meetings, and they're held in the evenings. So there's a, good chance that you could get off or could attend. And I think just for simplicity, if we just leave it the way it is, would it not be workable situation? Or, is it something that's broke far enough to where it's got to be changed, or what? What are your thoughts? Or
Well, the people that showed up to the meeting, they don't think they're getting represented. And they think they're just barking down the wrong street and nobody's listening to them, so.
Is there anybody from Judson Township on planning and zoning board? She's Round Prairie, but not by much, but a mile-ish. Is there not open position on planning and zoning or not? There isn't.
That would be for the city's planning and zoning board, but for the county planning and zoning board, I believe we have all seats filled.
Well, it looks like there's probably three things that can be done. Either approve the JPA, actually four, or turn the planning and zoning over to Judson and they can do their own. Leave it as is, or do we need to kick this upstairs and have it gone through and see if there's a happy medium somewhere in there that we can make it work? But I mean, because Cameron's saying that it's gonna be tough to use the JPA for his staff, and we don't wanna make that harder either.
I would agree, Corey, with that statement. And in addition, it also ties this board's hands on some decisions. And so that's, is that a road that the board necessarily wants to go down? One of the comments that was just made by Ms. Soyseth was that the Board of County Commissioners would give their recommendation. Well, this board is a final approval or denial board, not a recommendation board like the planning board. So that could possibly change this board's authority on making decisions within the zoning. The other comment I'd like to add, it was mentioned that this JPA would help keep zoning consistent throughout the county. This JPA, in my opinion, would do just the opposite. Currently, zoning is consistent through the county without having different sets of conditions for each township. And so this would actually change a certain township within the county on how we administer that. And then third and final comment I had is, since it was already mentioned about I believe it was the Bitcoin mining facility that's out there within Judson Township. The zone change, as we all know, was done, from what I kind of recall, 2011. However, they just needed to obtain a building permit because it was already zoned. Building permits don't go through public hearing processes. They don't make it in front of the boards. And so, again, this is very vague. Is that something now that would be required to have to go in front of Judson Township for their approval before we administratively issue that building permit? Because, again, we don't bring them in front of the Planning and Zoning and Building Board or County Commission. And I would just reiterate that building permits are time sensitive. Typically, when people apply for building permits, they want to get things moving along because of our short building season, and to have to wait 30 days to get approval for a building permit is something that would be very difficult for my staff to take the quote-unquote heat on from the public as they're trying to move through the process for a building permit. Thank you.
I guess I would just need maybe more clarification on the process. So the process right now would be, if somebody comes in to apply for a conditional use permit, is the township is notified, correct? Currently.
That's correct.
Then the process moves up the chain. Your staff has time and money involved. It goes to planning and zoning. 30 days later, it goes to, or 2 weeks later, yes, goes to county commission.
And two added steps, we also send a 1 mile notification radius to all property owners. And in addition to that, we also advertise in the newspaper.
I mean, this is probably a hard question, but has anybody really put a dollar amount to, basically a taxpayer dollar amount to what it would cost from the taxpayers for your staff to do stuff from start to finish and get it in front of the county commission, just in time? And
I have never done necessarily a study per item. If you look at my overall budget for my office, it will kind of give you an idea of what it costs to employ not only the staff for planning and zoning, but building.
I assume you know what I'm getting at. My point is for you guys to think of. I mean, I'm a steward of taxpayer dollars. So if we go through this whole process and it costs the county, say, $1,000 or $1,500 in labor to do all this, and it goes, and the final say is to you guys, and it's just automatically denied or whatever, I mean, that costs you guys money to do that. So would it not make more sense to, you guys have that opportunity on the front end, correct? To give opinion and...
We give opinion, but a lot of times we're actually overruled on different things. And that's where some of the frustration is coming from. He did mention a few different things, and if I may address them. For one, the Bitcoining part, I do understand that the planning and zoning was put into place as, so they only needed the building permit. We've researched that. There is some other discrepancies that we're not here to discuss the Bitcoining. That's just kind of what perpetuated it, but I would be more than happy to go over some of the discrepancies that we found if you would like us to. So that's really where this came from, but I don't see where there would be any difference in process, whether or not the township has the final say, or basically right now, we're the first say. Because we can get overridden by a board, planning and zoning, that isn't even voter approved on. They're just appointed by. So,
But they're only a recommendation.
They're only-
So that's
but
not, that,
that's all we are too, at this point.
but now you're wanting to go above, and then we're a recommendation board, but like Cameron was saying, we're not a recommendation board. We don't do it that way. I really think it looks to me like it has to be down to two things. It's either you guys take it over, or we keep it. Not a JPA, not something down the middle. It's gonna be, in my opinion, that's kind of where I'm at, and I'm not trying to be a jerk. I just we can't become a recommending board because we were elected to make the decisions.
The only part that you get into there is then you could have, say, 7 different townships that are gonna come up, and they're all gonna have different comprehensive use plans. Every township literally could be something different. At least now with the JPA, you would still have that uniformity where everybody would be functioning under the same umbrellas, basically the same rules, where you could be opening up the can of worms to where everybody would be different.
So through this whole process, all the way to the end, whoever is making the application, it comes to you guys for either approval or denial at the end. I mean, if it's approved or denied and a lawsuit incurs, I mean, who, do they sue you or do they sue the county? I mean, I'm assuming they sue you, correct? Because you would be the
Be a
final.
question for our
decision.
attorney.
Yeah.
He was gonna be on the call, but I don't hear him yet.
I could add to our zoning process of that is if the county commission makes a decision, the applicant would have 30 days to appeal it to this board. If they don't do it within the 30 days, or if the board still holds their decision, then it's up to that applicant to take it to district court, and then in turn, they would sue whatever governing body made that decision.
Did I hear somebody on the call? Is there somebody that wants
This is Bennett
to?
Johnson, the attorney for the Judson Township. I saw, Penny kind of kicked that question to me. What I was thinking is like how it would work is in terms of an appeal, is that the county would still be making the final decision. However, pursuant to the joint and cooperative administration of the zoning powers and the joint powers agreement, the township could also be named, and then to split the legal costs. But the county commissioners would still be they would make that final determination, or the official final determination. It's just that through the JPA, it's the township's recommendation would have to be followed, but the decision would still come from the county. And that's the way that the state engineer and water resource districts make, like drainage complaints, for instance, that you have to carry out the state engineer's recommendation, but it's still the water resource district that makes the determination.
So Ben,
It's a
just
very similar process.
to make sure I understood what you just said, we're still on the hook to make the decision, but Judson Township's actually making the decision to tell us what to say? Is that what I just understood you said?
Right, so, the recommended decision would come down, and then that would have to be carried out by the county's zoning authority and zoning power.
So
And then
in that scenario, then, this is Commissioner Anderson, in that scenario, then, if a lawsuit were to come down, then if the township says yes or no to something, a lawsuit comes down, it is shared by the county and the township, or just the county, because we ultimately have to make the decision?
I think that the way if the JPA was entered into, I think that it would be a joint administration of zoning, and that the township would also be named. because it is the township's decision, and I think that the appeal would name the township as well as, in addition to the county.
Bennett, what did you reference on the State Water Board?
With so for like unauthorized drainage complaints, when the state engineer goes and makes a recommended decision and the water resource district must carry out that decision, that just goes to the water board. There is no final, you have to follow it, but there's no final agency action by the state engineer. So you don't, in that circumstance, you do not name the state engineer in an appeal. It's only the water resource district. In this circumstance, because it is through a joint powers agreement referencing the joint administration of zoning, I believe that both parties, both entities, political subdivisions would be named.
Okay, does anybody have any more questions or comments?
I definitely think this is a unique conversation. And, I mean, Karen, have you had time to review any of this? I guess I would entertain that we would table this for now and have it gone through unless you have another opinion. But, I mean, I'm struggling, in my personal opinion, I mean, the voice comes from representation on the boards. So if, I'm obviously open to hearing from constituents because you guys are in my district. So if you have concerns, which you've called me on, and I believe I've tried to bring those concerns up at meetings. I think the Planning and Zoning Board is a good place for somebody from Judson Township to get onto, to help get your township's views on that planning and zoning. I think this is going to make things difficult. I mean, I don't think it's fair if in a legal situation that if we have to make the decision, but it's on your strong recommendation or whatever at the very end, that basically we're still going to get sued. So, I mean, if it's something that you guys didn't want and we approved and you disapprove it in the lawsuit, to me, it's like, that's your decision. And does that make sense? Or what do you guys think? I mean, your lawyer says otherwise, which obviously means that I'm wrong, but I've been wrong before, I think. My wife says that, so.
Yeah, like Cameron mentioned, we did have a conversation about this, and to tell you the truth, I agree with Cameron in terms of like, is it sections 5, 6, and 7? I mean, I have no problem with the JPA, but items number 5, 6, and 7, I would not recommend that for the exact same reasons that Cameron mentioned, though. I mean, I could go through it and make some recommendations to it, but really the only thing I would recommend is to just take out paragraphs 5, 6, and 7, and just basically say that it's the county zoning regulations that would apply, and that the Board of County Commissioners would have had final say on anything.
So, but basically through the JPA, nothing would change, correct?
Be correct.
So, correct, yeah. That's why, part of me says that, would you guys be open to, if we table this, have a discussion with a group, but then would that be setting up a committee?
Absolutely, it would.
Yeah.
I guess the question I would have is, without those in it, it's none of the things that you just wanted to happen are going to happen. So we've gone through and made another JPA that doesn't do anything. And, I mean, to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense, because then we can just get ready to write 52 JPAs. So I guess I would disagree with you, Bo, just because the fact that if we take that out, that's not what you're asking for, right? So I think we're back to square one, where we have to decide either they do the planning and zoning or we do the planning and zoning. And I don't know how else to put it. I'm not trying to sound like a jerk. I can't wrap my head around a different way to do it.
I guess I agree with you, Commissioner Hanson, in the fact that I guess this board and prior boards and future boards are all elected by the public to make decisions and make rules and regulations based on suggestions and opinions of the staff that we hire. And I guess if people don't like the decisions that this board makes, they got one of two options. they can either recall us, or they can get their names on the ballots and get petitions and seek elections to make the changes that we have. Because in my opinion, if this joint powers agreement goes through, it doesn't make sense for Williams County to have a planning and zoning department. Because, number one, we probably won't be able to keep a staff, because if you can imagine all the work that they're gonna have to do for every township in the county, that can change with each JPA, with each township. I think personally, the staff that we have has done a great job, and that we've got regulations in place that I think fit all of Williams County. So, and I'm not being derogatory or demeaning to anybody, but like I said, if they don't like our decisions, they got one or two options.
Is there any last comments before we turn it over to the board for a decision?
I do have one question, Commissioner Montgomery. What would be more work? According to this, everything is exactly the same, except that our recommendation is, just can't be overruled. So what work would be any different if everything is being the same, when all the planning and zoning, the comprehensive use plan, where everything is the same? So what process, or what, I don't understand what would be more work for that department, because they're already doing it right now anyways. I mean, because we're not changing any of that. We're just changing where the final say basically lies.
So
How strong our recommendation.
I would say inadvertently, it will cause you guys substantially more work, because if I wanted to do something in Judson Township, if this were to be signed, that means that I need to spend all my time with you guys, right? Which I don't necessarily disagree with. I have to spend all my time with you guys during your meetings, and because if I change this, do that, and you still say no, there's zero reason for me to go through the process, right? I mean, so if I go through the process and get to you guys and it was a no from the get-go, then I've wasted my time and the county's time.
I think the other thing too, Penny, is the fact is extra work that the office would have to do, chasing down building permit approvals, which we don't have to do now, you know, on and on and on, I guess. So there's some big changes. I guess to me, it boils down to trust, you know.
I just want to also point out that under a state zoning law, it's the Board of County Commissioners that has the final say on zoning regulations, and you really can't delegate that authority to the township, and that's what you really basically be doing, is if you just sort of rubber stamp their recommendations, really, so.
So state law says no, right?
I would say that would be correct.
Okay. Okay, if there's not any other comments, appreciate it. We'll turn it over to the board, and what are the wishes, gentlemen? Yeah, I suppose we could do nothing.
Yeah, I guess, you know, just to give Judson Township, you know, sort of a final decision on this, I would make some sort of motion. If you don't want to do the JPA, I would just make some sort of motion saying that motion move to reject the JPA, and that's it, really. Motion to move to reject the JPA as
I
presented.
know, I'm just in my mind, Karen, because I was always taught in Robert's Rules of Order that you can't really have a motion made with a negative intent. But if that's right or wrong, I don't know. I mean, in my mind, it's a motion to approve the signing the joint powers agreement. If nobody seconds it, then the motion dies and there is nothing to vote on, but it's up to you.
Well, no. So, I was pushing the button. Yeah, there's times when you know, You know, and they're asking you to sign a contract, so I just think that it would be only fair to them for you to say, no, we're not going to sign it.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to, at this time, turn down the request to join a joint powers agreement with Judson Township on zoning authority.
We have a motion. Is there a second for that?
I would second that.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion?
I just quickly, I mean, I would say that my only concern is it is a unique request. I think it could use a little extra discussion or looking into, but I also respect the decision, so.
Oh, yeah, I would agree. I mean, it is a very unique request, and I understand completely they want a local authority or local control, but I don't really see where you can have a hybrid of it. I mean, you either have control or you don't. I mean, and if I think we could help or we could do whatever we could for them if they want to start their own planning and zoning, but I don't see where a hybrid mix of the two would be any better than what we got.
Any other discussion? Beth, can you read that motion back?
To turn down the request by Judson Township on zoning authority.
Okay. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes?
Barry,
Yes.
Motion carried. Next, we go to unfinished business, Second Amendment, Sanctuary Proclamation. I know there was a meeting that was held. I guess we can probably start. Sheriff, do you want to start? You were in the meeting, Karen was in it, Barry was. Who else was there? Gerald was there? Okay. Okay, we'll just, as long as we got one person, let's let the sheriff go, then we'll get you down here so you don't have to stand and wait.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I believe, Barry, I talked to you on the phone this past week about something.
Yes, we did. And I guess I would, I would recommend that we sign off on this. I'm trying to find it here in my, is it a,
No, Barry, okay. Okay, before Verlin starts, Barry, I have information, now you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I have information that you are, yep, okay. Yep, good, okay.
just, got, you lost me there for a minute. Just so everybody knows, I am a member of the Sons of Liberty. So is that far enough or?
Well,
Yep, you know, and I did, you know, and when I had a conversation with Barry this past week, I did a little bit of digging into that. And because this is a resolution, that means that this board is acting sort of in a legislative or a quasi-legislative role. And so that means that there's got to be a direct and substantial personal or pecuniary, which is a monetary interest in it, really. And Barry's membership on the Sons of Liberty, with the Sons of Liberty, really isn't enough of a direct and substantial interest, because it's got to be something that's personal and individual to him, and I'm not aware of any sort of financial interest or anything like that by any kind of vote or anything like that.
if it's like the rest of the stuff we belong to, it's costing you money, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, I just wanted Barry to disclose that just for, you know, transparency, and also just let you know that I don't believe that there's any conflict in terms of the statute, North Dakota Statute Code 4404 20-something, yeah, 20-something, yep. So anyways, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Berlin, it's to you.
yeah, obviously, there's a lot of discussion at the beginning of the meeting. I think working from both sides, tweaking some of the language within the document, I certainly can get behind the sentiment of it. I'm very much pro-Second Amendment. Myself, in the office of sheriff, I support the idea of protecting our Second Amendment right, and I certainly will do that myself within this office as best I can under the rule of law. And what is stated within the document, I think, gives the discretion to the commission and to my office as well to do what we think is appropriate and correct as it relates to the Second Amendment.
Okay, you guys got any questions for the sheriff? We got a couple other people that are gonna stand up and talk quick before we let Barry talk. Not that we can let you talk. You can talk whenever you want, but, you wanna come up? Great, just introduce yourself for the record so we can get it down.
Yeah, I'm Jeff Wade with Beyond the speaking for the Sons of Liberty, I guess, in the Williston chapter here. And it was brought up by Kathy Cartier, and since she had to go to a doctor's appointment, I'm filling in. But yeah, I was at the meeting that the sheriff was at, and Barry, and as far as I know, we come to a decision. Everyone was fine with the way the wording come up with, and we're hoping you guys will sign off on it.
Perfect, thank you. Karen, come on down.
All right, I just wanted to sort of, I mean, not everybody has a copy of this proposed proclamation, so I just wanted to point out that other than wanting to protect the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, there's also different provisions in there. One of them basically makes all future federal acts, laws, rules, and regulations, and presidential executive orders that infringe on the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms would be considered void and of no effect in Williams County. The second thing would give the sheriff the authority and discretion to arrest any federal agents who attempt to enforce any future acts, laws, rules, regulations, or presidential executive orders that infringe on the Second Amendment rights. And then it gives the board, the county commissioners, discretion to take action related to federal law that infringes on these Second Amendment rights. As I stated at the last board meeting, the Constitution does contain a supremacy clause that basically says that federal law trumps any sort of contradictory state law. During the committee meeting that we had last week, it came up that the proclamation or the act that they were proposing that this board sign was actually obtained from Renville County and Stark counties, which adopted sort of similar resolutions. Well, after the committee meeting last week, I reached out to the state's attorney's office, the state's attorneys for both of those counties. The state's attorney for Stark County basically told me that she told the Board of County Commissioners that really the supremacy clause under the Constitution really trumps state law. And she also said that the sheriff really in that county doesn't have free range to do whatever he wants to do really in terms of federal regulation. But the board for Stark County went ahead and adopted the resolution anyways. When I reached out to the Renville County State's Attorney, he basically also told me that he told the Board of County Commissioners that federal law generally trumps state law, but the board went ahead and passed the resolution as presented to them because they wanted to send a message. I also reached out to the North Dakota Association of Counties, and I talked to Aaron Burst, and he said that he had been asked about this by different counties, and it basically told them that it would, if you sign this resolution, that it'd basically be symbolic because it really would have no legal effect whatsoever, really. Both federal and state law already prohibit the federal government from requiring state or local authorities to enforce federal laws or regulations, except in certain circumstances. But this doesn't prevent federal agents or officers from enforcing federal law. We don't have jurisdiction to control federal officers or departments or agencies. One of the things that came up at the committee meeting too was that, that possibly the sheriff of the county had the right to sort of remove or kick out federal agents from the county, but Verlin at that time, Verlin wasn't aware of any state law or legal authority for that. I'm really not aware of anything like that either. So basically, if the board passes this resolution, when we met at the committee meeting last week, I wanted to make sure that if the board passed it, that there would be discretion in all stages for the board, which means this board would be able to decide whether any action was required under the act or whether they wanted to take any action and what kind of action that would be. And we also, at Verlin's request, also put in there that the sheriff would have discretion about what to do with federal agents really and federal law. So when we did meet with the committee meeting, I did suggest changes in there that would give the discretion to the board and to the sheriff, But that was the only thing that I only put those, I only recommended those changes in there because if the board was gonna pass something like that, I wanted something there to give the board and the sheriff discretion, really. That doesn't mean that I'm okay with it, to tell you the truth. It's like, I'm not here to tell you whether you should sign it or not. I'm just telling you, but sort of the legal ramifications of it would probably be not, I mean, there's no way that this board can just tell a federal agent, you can't enforce federal law. We can say that we won't help you, but we can't say you cannot enforce federal law.
But you put in here to make it so it's legal. I mean, that's the big question I have is if this is signed, is it legal? Which, from the looks of it, it leaves it to the discretion of the commission or the sheriff to make those decisions down the road. Correct?
I guess what I'm saying is it's hard to say whether it is legal or not because until a federal law comes down that sort of challenges this thing, I mean, if the federal law is something that is different than state law, that's a different story. But the federal law is not different than state law. I mean, that's a different story. So I put, I guess what I'm saying is it's hard to say whether or not what if this would actually be legal or not until it's actually challenged, really. And like I said before, at the last meeting, generally federal laws are interpreted by federal courts. And the U.S. Constitution also says that state court judges are also bound by federal law. So, at this point, if you sign this, you'd be basically doing something symbolic. I mean, yeah.
Okay, so if we pass it, it's symbolic, and it gets challenged someday in court, who pays for it? Are we covered by NDERF?
There are certain things that NDERF does not cover. I don't know for sure if it would cover
Okay,
something
I
else.
mean, my question might be simple. What does this cost the taxpayer if we pass the resolution and we get called out on the carpet someday? I mean, it will cost the taxpayers money to defend this resolution. Or for us to defend our stance on the
Well,
resolution.
one way or another, it's going to cost the taxpayers, whether it's in the money that, the insurance premium that we pay to NDERF, or if it's not covered by NDERF, by just directly out of pocket from the county, really. And I also just wanted to point out, though, too, I'm definitely pro-Constitution. I mean, this board, the elected officials in this county sign an oath of office saying that they're going to uphold the U.S. Constitution. That means all the amendments and also the North Dakota Constitution. And I would be concerned about this board signing this kind of proclamation presented by the Sons of Liberty because it's obviously anti-federal regulation. I mean, their intent under this would be to say that any future federal law that's enacted would be automatically considered an infringement of constitutional rights under this act. And I'm just saying that you as a board represent all of the county, all of the citizens of Williams County. And to tell you the truth, I would not recommend that you sign this, but again, if you want to sign it, I put things in there that gives you discretion whether or not to do something and what to do.
Any other questions for Karen? No? Anything? Howard, do you have something you want to come up? Could you?
My name is Howard Klug. I'm a citizen of Williams County. My comment is, when we needed the FBI in Williams County, when things were crazy, they came. And I sure hope that their presence here made a difference in Williams County. And I would hope that the sheriff of Williams County realizes what their presence here meant to the Williston Police Department and the Williston Sheriff's Department. And I hope that in the future, our sheriff would be in cooperation with federal agents. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I guess I have one question for the board, and you know, if we're gonna go down this road, how do we handle these in the future? Because I don't think that this is gonna be the only one, because there's lots of groups and there's lots of different things going on in the United States and all the way down to the county and city level. So I think there'll probably be more of these. So I guess that's just something to think about as to how are we going to handle this in the future if this keeps moving forward.
I guess I'll just add, Commissioner Hanson, that's probably one of the joys of sitting in these chairs and making these decisions. I think the only way you can do it is just handle each one on a one-by-one basis.
Okay. Well, I guess that puts us, I have one other person that I'm going to let come up, and that's going to be it. So come on up.
Hi, I'm Brittany Cradaville. I'm also Sons of Liberty, Cradaville, Kratochvil. I would just like to remind the board that your authority derives from the consent of the governed, and that constitutionally, the federal government and state government haven't always had our best interests, our constitutional God-given interests at heart. So that's great. The FBI can come and work with Williams County, but at the end of the day, it's their job to protect our constitutional rights. And from what we've seen, that seems to be at odds with, the current administration seems to be at odds with what those God-given constitutional rights are. So as elected officials, I mean, you can take the recommendations of unelected public employees, or you can take a look at what your obligations are as governing body that is there to protect our rights. Thank you.
Okay, appreciate that. I think, number one, we have signed an oath to uphold the Constitution, and this kind of comes back to who's making the decision if it's constitutional or not, and we aren't that board. We can't decide if it's constitutional. Any group of us can't decide if it's unconstitutional. It's going to have to go to a federal court to make that decision. So that kind of ties our hands on the constitutionality of it, just because myself or Commissioner Anderson believe it doesn't make it unconstitutional. So that's my only hold up on it is we can't decide it. It's decided quite a ways up the ladder from where we're sitting.
And I'm not against the Second Amendment, nor am I against the Constitution. I mean, unfortunately, I think back to the legal ramifications, because if I'm not against the resolution. What I'm against is if someday, a year or 2, 5, 10 years from now, it comes down to a lawsuit, the taxpayers in this room in Williams County, in the state of North Dakota, will be paying for both sides of the argument. This happens every day in this country, where the U.S. government gets sued, or a local government gets sued by another government, and guess who pays for everything? We all do. We all have to pay both sides. And in my opinion, it's ridiculous, but it's part of the process. So, I mean, if this comes down to we pass the resolution and we end up in court, guess what? We all get to pay a couple $100,000 to prove one side is wrong, and that's if it's a symbolic thing, and we all have to pay a couple $100,000 to see if it's right, I don't know. I mean, that's what I disapprove of.
Well, I would say it probably is more symbolic than anything, but if in the future, if it ever comes down to where we are going to be sued because of something, we'll have bigger problems than that anyway. So, having said that, I would make a motion that the Williams County Board of Commissioners adopt resolution number 2022-08-16 and have the chairman sign.
There is a motion on the floor from Commissioner Ramberg. Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, it's motioned and second. Discussion, please, from the board. Does anybody have any discussion? Anything to add? Everybody's good? Roll call vote, please.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
No.
Barry,
Yes.
Corey.
No.
Yeah, because it's a tie, you're gonna have to push this to the next board meeting until all of you are present, so that you can vote on it again without a tie, so.
Okay, so we just say it's pushed to the next agenda?
Yep.
Okay. So that'll be the case. Let's move to the next agenda. You'll put it on?
Yes.
Thank you. Now we're to the, well, we're to you, Beth, auditor.
Thank you. We had a, election committee, the election committee met, after the last commission meeting on, August 2nd. And we went through some things, and you have them in your packets. My staff went out and they checked in various locations throughout Williams County as far as connectivity and whether or not our election equipment would work in different locations if the commissioners, after this last election in June, we had some comments and stuff made as far as where voting locations should be. I presented to the election committee, and they're in your packet, as I said, different polling locations, which are not vote centers, but they're polling locations, which means certain precincts will be able to vote at those polling locations. One of the polling locations being Grenora City Hall. And in your package, you'll see the layout of the city hall and how it will work. We'll have connectivity where the people will come in to the clerks, judges, and so on and so forth. And the people that would vote there, if you go to your map at the end, the people that would vote there would be everybody in the purple area, which is precinct number 54. And everybody, of course, within the city of Grenora would vote there. And then if you go down to the south, which I believe goes all the way to Highway number 2 and to that little jog, those people would vote there. And so Commissioner District number 1 people would vote there, and Commissioner District number 5 people would vote there, as well as the city of Grenora. The other location that we're looking at is a polling location is Wildrose City Hall, which is also the fire hall. We have connectivity there also, and it's very good in all the locations that we tested. And for the polling locations, the precincts that would vote there would be precinct number 54. And just so the people in attendance, precinct 54 is basically 1 mile to the west of Highway 85 going up north. And it's basically the whole the eastern part of the county is precinct number 55. And in Wildrose, we would have precinct number 65, which is the city of Wildrose. We would have precinct number 68, which is the city of Alamo. And we would have precinct number 54, which is all the purple, again. And then we go on down to Ray, which the voting would be at the City Hall location in Ray. And I did talk to the city auditors from Epping and Springbrook, and they said since they don't have the since they don't have the capability of appointing poll workers and getting election workers for us like the other cities, they declined to have a polling location in their cities, and Epping and Springbrook will go to Ray to vote, or they will go to the ARC, which we will keep as a vote center. So anybody in Williams County can still go to the ARC as a vote center. That's what that VC stands for by right there. And then the last polling location that I'm recommending and the committee approved is the polling location would be at the Tioga City Hall instead of the Tioga Community Center. And at the Tioga City Hall, we would have precinct number 54, which is the city of Tioga. 64, which is the city of Tioga, and 54, which is all the purple. Basically, all the purple gets to vote at any polling location they want to because it's such a huge area. And these are my proposed polling locations and vote center for the upcoming November election. Also in your, and this really doesn't have a lot to do with the election, because no matter what, we have to, there's costs involved. And as you see inside there, one of my staff did a cost estimate of the election workers and how much it would cost. And we're talking $15,085.44, which is basically a drop in the bucket so that we can have the county covered. And this will also ensure the cities from here on out, every June election, the cities will be able to vote in their own cities and not have to go to vote centers. Because I know that was a little hard on a lot of the cities that we had in June, for their people not to be able to go to their own city halls and to vote right there in their own town. They can still go, if they want to the vote center at the Raymond Center and vote there if they choose, but they're going to all stay in their own cities and vote. The last thing that I am going to do is we are going to, and I have it all prepared, we are going to send out absentee applications to everybody in the county. And it's going to be, what? Oh, I thought somebody said something. And it's basically going to be a blank application because I don't want an application that's part ways filled out with people's private information on them going to Barry's address. Barry no longer lives there, but whoever's there opens up this letter that is intended for Barry, and it shows his name and whatever else that we're going to print on those absentee applications. So I'm going to send out a blank absentee application to anybody that would like to vote by mail, and then we will send them out a ballot when or if they choose to send and fill out that absentee voter's application and send it back to me. I have a letter prepared that I'm going to send along with the absentee application, explaining the process that we do as far as you can vote at any of the locations, who's eligible to vote at those locations. You can also vote at the vote center. You don't have to vote by mail if you don't want to, or send that back for me to send you an absentee ballot. And so I'll have two documents going out, so it kind of clarifies things that I neglected to do in the June election, and I apologize to everybody that voted and all the confusion that it may have caused in June. And so today, I am requesting that the commissioners designate polling locations and the vote center for Williams County for the upcoming November 8th election. And if the commissioners do not decide that in 2024, when this comes up again, 64 days prior to the election, if the commissioners want to change this, my recommendation is not to, but if you want to change the polling locations and the vote center, you guys can do that again 64 days prior to the June election in 2024. Thank you. Oh, any questions?
So I was just gonna say, has anybody got any questions for Beth? Yeah. What are the wishes?
I would make a motion to approve the designated polling locations for the November 8th, 2022 general election. And vote center.
I'll
Is there-
second.
Motion and second. David? Any discussion?
Just quickly, I mean, for the folks that are in the Trenton area, I mean, we also offered out to them to use, or to ask to use TISA correctly for a polling location, and they voted not to let us use that as a polling location, I guess. So, I mean, if there's folks from the Trenton area, would there, I mean, because we're doing this early, would there be an opportunity if they, no, not for this year. So there was consideration for the folks in Trenton. So if anybody in the Trenton area feels otherwise different for the next election, I need to hear about it. So, thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot that we did. I did inquire, and we were told no. So,
Okay, any other discussion? Roll call, Beth.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
Motion carried.
and thank you very much.
Thanks. Lindsay?
Good morning. In 2021, when the commission approved the behavioral health grants, the grants were approved on a primarily reimbursement basis, meaning that the grant awardees would not get the funds until they had expended them or were about to for larger purchases. And so therefore, there are some individual approved grant expenses that didn't come to fruition for various reasons, and the county essentially is retaining those funds. That's in the amount of about $61,000. During the budget meetings, we discussed this amount and plans for what to do with it, and the board's recommendation was to look into how we could provide that back to schools, knowing that some of the schools in Williams County are receiving services right now based from the grant awards, and that there's additional needs to be met. So what I've provided you with is a recommendation to split $60,000 of that between our 5 school districts and Wilmac, in the amount of $10,000 each, in which they can apply for up to that amount, and apply in the sense of telling us what they would use it for, not necessarily disapproving or approving what that is, but just expressing how they would intend to use those funds. And then there's a small reporting requirement that they would just provide some follow-up information. This is primarily structured off of how you all did the infrastructure grants to the schools a few years ago. And then the intention would be that the funds would be expended by the end of this school year. I've been able to talk with a couple of the superintendents here lately, just confirming that, yes, there's still needs to be met in the behavioral health realm. We have definitely gotten really good feedback from like Ray Public Schools for the services that they've received as a result of the initial grant rounds. So certainly this would help to be a step in the right direction to help meet the needs of behavioral health in our school system.
Anybody got any questions for Lindsay about this?
So I'd just be seeking a motion to approve the program details and application as presented.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Barry,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thanks. I will notify the schools today. The next item on the agenda is the 1% public safety sales tax. In February of this year, the commission expressed interest in pursuing an extension of that sales tax. It does expire in March of 2025. During your budget meetings, we discussed the extension of that a little bit further, what funds have used for and what they could be used for in the future. And so with putting language on the ballot, there are deadlines to meet with regards to the November election. So we are a little bit ahead of the game here. And so today would be seeking 2 separate motions. One, to approve putting the question on the ballot, and then a second separate motion for the actual ballot language. The language that is being proposed in front of you is similar to what was on the ballot in 2014. And that's with regards to providing the supplemental funding for public safety departments and agencies for a 10-year period beginning in April 1st of 2025. But the language also then explicitly includes behavioral health, which here recently had been extended to be included in the definition of public safety. And so then this, with putting it in the ballot language, would definitely include that as part of public safety.
Okay, does everybody understand that? So we're looking for two motions.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to,
Oh, your microphone.
sorry, can't read and look at the same time. Hang on.
Hard, I know.
I'll make a motion to submit the question of a public safety 1% sales tax to the electorate for a vote of the people at the November 8th, 2022 general election.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
No.
Motion carried.
Make a motion to approve the ballot measure language for the public safety 1% sales tax for the November 8th general election, 2022 general election.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
No.
Corey,
Yes. Motion carried.
Thanks. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, didn't miss any other department heads today. Now we're to Helen. You didn't have any? Did you have something? Hang on, Helen. Sorry. It wasn't on here. Dennis, come on up.
Thank you. Okay, we have some good news. The Wayne Crowe, the county engineer, applied for several different structures, bridges throughout Williams County through a DOT grant program. We were successful with one bridge, 100% paid for, in Rainbow Township. So, yep. Other than that, that's it. Oh, sorry. So we'll be sending out RFPs for consultants to go through that, put it together.
Is there any time frame? Have you heard any time frame on the one for 11A and?
Have not heard anything.
Nothing. Okay. Just
Nothing
curious.
yet. I would hope soon.
All right. Thank you. Okay, Helen, now it's to you.
Good morning. I actually have an updated list, and so I'm going to hand it to Beth so she has it for the record. Sometimes we have changes happen on a Monday, and so then I add them, even though I've already put this on the agenda and emailed it out. So on the list you have in front of you, we have an addition of 2 positions that we talked about during budget hearings. And again, I would just recap that we use budget hearings as our opportunity to plan for how we might evolve and better execute our work in the upcoming year. And sometimes we try and then implement some of those plans early if it makes sense and if it's going to move us along a little sooner. So we have 2 positions. One is a lieutenant position in the corrections department. And what we're doing is emulating what we have going on in the patrol division, which provides an additional, let's call it a middle leadership position, middle management, that helps to deal with what ends up to be quite a number of staff and scheduling and equipment type responsibilities. So it's a corrections lieutenant position. The sheriff did do some shuffling within the total staff counts in corrections, and so it doesn't actually add a position, but it's a different role, and this board has the responsibility or the authority to approve any such changes that we make. The other new position would be what we're calling a community engagement coordinator. And that would be held by Lindsay Harriman. It's actually, some of the work that she's been doing on our behalf is really not a fit anymore with the communications and research analyst role that she was hired into. But there's a lot of communications work to do as well. And so we talked about there will be some work that Lindsay's already doing that will be included in this new position, and then work related to helping to manage that Parks Master Plan will also be included in the workload for that position. And so in essence, what you have here then, and you see I gave you a little arrow underneath, what we're doing is approving this new community engagement coordinator position. But by way of that, we'd like to fill the communications role then, so that we can continue to have that work being done as well. Then you'll see on the list that we have a communications officer, or not a communications officer, excuse me, a corrections officer. We had a resignation.
At this time, I guess I'd like to add the other change, and I think we can do it right at the same time. It's one that I guess I've been thinking about since I got elected to the board, and it's the county administrator position. And basically what it amounts to is it's going to be a title change for Helen, because she, in my opinion, she's been doing the county administrator job since I've been here, and I think as Barry's laughing, he's going to tell you it's been longer than that, and we appreciate it. But you know, to make sure everybody understands, she's still going to oversee HR, communications, and GIS. But it's a title change to more reflect what Helen actually does for us at Williams County. So I would like to add that change on there, and if anybody has any comments, feel free to jump in.
I lost my track of mine, sorry. You are correct, Barry and I, as long-terms, I think it's been a situation that we've discussed, and I personally have discussed with Helen prior to you two gentlemen even being here, so I think it's a good move, because in the past, I think she, I don't know if not too excited is the right word, but glad to see that you're finally getting on board, because the other thing is it will help us, in my opinion. I won't be here for that to happen, but when the time comes for Helen to leave or retire, it transitions us into, I think, a better position. So with that being said, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the request as presented.
With the addition of the administrator one?
Oh, second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Beth, roll call.
Corey,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barry.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. I do appreciate, I appreciate all of the, I appreciate that you acknowledge what I've done over the years. I think, as you all know, I haven't desired the title, and I've been concerned that if we make a big structural change, it would somehow ruin what I think is really a good thing that we have going on here in terms of departments working together and the synergy that we have to solve problems. And so I'm glad to continue doing what I'm doing, continue to take the direction of the board and help this organization along as long as I'm here. Another item, we do have a policy that addresses folks who might be currently working for us but relocating out of the area but wanting or needing to work remotely. And I do have, it's actually an employee in one of the departments that I oversee, the GIS department, who has plans to relocate and has requested to continue to work for us remotely. And that would be Raphael, who you see sitting in the back today. And so I did talk to our portfolio commissioner. There's a process through this policy that really says the commission can make the decision to designate a remote work site authorization for an individual person/position. The person has to have worked for us for a period of time. And so one of the things I would tell you is that this isn't creating long-term a remote work position. It's saying somebody who we think has real specific talent and abilities, which we would say Raphael does. I, as the HR director, work with people who come to me with this request and say, if we can hire people locally, then this isn't a position to be filled as a remote work job. But Raphael does have a a master's degree in GIS. Took us almost a year to fill the position the last time it was open. If he can continue to work remotely in an effective way, which I believe we can facilitate, then I think that's the right choice for us. So I do need this board to authorize that worksite designation change. That's our policy word for it. And then I, as the supervisor, would facilitate that.
I'll make a motion to approve that request, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Bo,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Barry,
Yes.
Corey.
Yes. Motion carried.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Appreciate it. And with that, we will adjourn the August 16th, 2022 County Commissioners meeting.